10 powerful ways to master detachment. The psychology of emotional power.
Have you ever noticed how some people seem completely unaffected by chaos? They are not cold, not emotionless, not disconnected from life. Yet no matter what happens, rejection, disappointment, betrayal, silence, or pressure, they remain steady. They don't chase, they don't beg for understanding, they don't collapse when things fall apart. And the most confusing part is this: they still feel everything, but nothing seems to control them. This is not luck, it is not personality, it is detachment, but not the version most people misunderstand. True detachment is not about not caring. It is about no longer allowing what you cannot control to control your inner world. And once you understand how it works, you begin to see something uncomfortable. Most emotional suffering does not come from events themselves. It comes from attachment to outcomes we never had control over in the first place. So how do people actually develop this level of emotional power? Here are 10 powerful ways to master detachment.
Number 1. Separate what you feel from what is true. One of the first breakthroughs in emotional detachment is learning to stop confusing feelings with facts. Just because something feels personal does not mean it is. Just because something hurts does not mean it defines your worth. The mind often reacts emotionally before it evaluates reality. A delayed reply becomes rejection. A misunderstanding becomes disrespect. A setback becomes failure. But emotionally powerful people create a gap between reaction and interpretation. They pause long enough to ask one question: what is actually happening here independent of how I feel about it? That small mental separation is where control begins. Because once feelings stop becoming final conclusions, they return to what they were meant to be: signals, not sentences.
Number 2. Stop outsourcing your emotional stability. Many people are emotionally dependent without realizing it. Their mood depends on who texts them. Their confidence depends on who praises them. Their peace depends on who agrees with them. This is emotional outsourcing, and it creates instability because you are handing control of your inner world to external people who change daily. Detachment begins when you reverse this structure. Instead of asking, "How do they feel about me?" you start asking, "How do I feel about who I am becoming?" This shift is subtle but powerful, because now validation becomes optional, not essential. Approval becomes welcome, not required, and rejection loses its ability to shake your identity.
Let's see what Numbers 3 says. Learn the psychology of non-response. One of the strongest signs of emotional control is not reacting immediately. Most people respond as soon as they feel discomfort. They reply in anger. They explain too much. They defend too quickly. They overreact to small triggers. But detachment introduces something different: space. In psychology, space between stimulus and response is where emotional intelligence lives. When you don't rush to respond, you gain access to clarity instead of impulse. Not every situation deserves a reaction. Not every comment deserves correction. Not every provocation deserves engagement. Sometimes silence is not avoidance. It is control. Because whoever controls their response controls the outcome of the interaction.
4. Detach from the need to be understood. One of the most exhausting emotional patterns is the constant need to be understood by everyone. People spend hours explaining themselves to those who were not even trying to listen. They repeat their intentions. They defend their decisions. They try to repair every misunderstanding. But emotional power changes this completely. Detachment teaches a hard truth. Not everyone is meant to understand you. And not everyone will interpret you fairly. Some people misunderstand because they are limited by their perspective. Others misunderstand because they are committed to misunderstanding. And emotionally powerful individuals learn to recognize the difference. Instead of forcing understanding, they prioritize peace. Instead of endless explanation, they choose clarity of action. Because real understanding is not demanded, it is recognized.
This brings us to number 5. Release the illusion of control over outcomes. This is one of the deepest shifts in emotional detachment. Most anxiety comes from trying to control outcomes that are partially or completely outside your influence. You can do everything right and still not get the result you expected. You can give effort, loyalty, consistency, and still experience loss. And this creates internal conflict. If I did everything right, why didn't it work? But life does not operate on fairness alone. It operates on complexity. Timing, perception, environment, and chance all play roles. Detachment does not remove ambition. It removes dependency on certainty. So instead of obsessing over outcomes, emotionally powerful people focus on input, effort, integrity, consistency, presence. Because once you detach from outcomes, you stop breaking every time reality surprises you. You adjust instead of collapse. You continue instead of stop.
We come to number 6. Master the art of emotional non-clinging. One of the clearest signs of low emotional detachment is clinging. Clinging to people, outcomes, conversations, or even moments that are already changing. Clinging is subtle. It doesn't always look desperate on the outside. Sometimes it appears as over-texting, over-explaining, over-giving, or over-investing in someone who is already emotionally distant. But psychologically, clinging comes from one core belief. If I hold on tightly enough, I can prevent loss. Detachment challenges this illusion, because in reality, nothing stable in life is maintained through force. People change, situations shift, interest fades, opportunities evolve. Emotionally powerful individuals learn to observe without gripping. They can appreciate someone without needing to possess them. They can value an experience without trying to freeze it in place. This doesn't mean they don't care. It means they don't suffocate what they care about. And ironically, this creates stronger connections because people feel freedom instead of pressure.
Number 7. Detach from other people's interpretations of you. At some point in life, you will realize something uncomfortable but freeing. People are not reacting to you. They are reacting to their perception of you. And their perception is shaped by their past experiences, insecurities, expectations, and emotional state. This means you will never fully control how you are interpreted. You can speak with clarity and still be misunderstood. You can act with kindness and still be judged unfairly. You can move with integrity and still be misread. Most people suffer because they try to correct every interpretation of themselves. But emotional detachment introduces a different mindset. I am responsible for my behavior, not everyone's interpretation of it. This shift removes unnecessary emotional weight, because instead of trying to manage every opinion, you focus on consistency in your values. And over time, consistency speaks louder than explanation ever could. 8. Stop personalizing every emotional reaction from others.
One of the draining emotional habits is taking everything personally. If someone is distant, you assume you caused it. If someone is irritated, you assume it is directed at you. If someone withdraws, you assume rejection. But psychologically, people are constantly reacting to internal experiences that have nothing to do with you. Stress, fatigue, past memories, external pressure, unresolved emotional patterns. Detachment teaches you to separate presence from projection. Just because someone is acting a certain way in your direction does not mean you are the cause. Emotionally powerful people ask a different question. What else could be influencing this behavior? This question alone prevents unnecessary emotional damage, because not everything that feels personal actually is.
Check out number 9. Practice emotional economy. Not everything deserves your emotional energy. This is one of the most overlooked principles of psychological strength. Every conversation, every reaction, every explanation, every argument, it all costs energy. And when you spend that energy carelessly, you eventually become emotionally exhausted without understanding why. Detachment introduces emotional economy. You learn to invest your emotional energy where it has meaning, not where it is simply triggered. You stop engaging in conversations that exist only to drain you. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop reacting to every small provocation. You stop giving intense emotional responses to situations that are temporary. Instead, you become selective. And selectivity creates strength. Because the less emotionally scattered you are, the more stable your inner world becomes.
And lastly, number 10. Build identity from within, not from external reflection. This is the deepest level of emotional detachment. Most people build their identity like a mirror. They look outward at praise, rejection, success, failure, and adjust how they feel about themselves based on what they see reflected back. But this creates instability, because the external world is constantly shifting. Emotionally powerful individuals do something different. They build identity from internal foundations, values, principles, self-awareness, personal standards. They ask, what kind of person do I choose to be, regardless of how others respond? This creates internal stability, because even when external validation disappears, identity remains intact. Even when outcomes fluctuate, self-worth does not collapse. Even when people leave, the sense of self does not disappear. This is emotional independence at its highest level.
In conclusion, detachment is not the absence of emotion. It is emotional mastery. It is the ability to feel deeply without being controlled deeply. And once you understand all 10 of these principles, something begins to shift quietly inside you. You stop chasing constant reassurance. You stop reacting to every emotional trigger. You stop trying to control what was never yours to control. And slowly, your attention returns to where real power has always existed, within you. Not in how people respond to you, not in how situations unfold, but in how you choose to respond to life itself. Because life will always remain unpredictable. People will change, circumstances will shift, and outcomes will never be fully guaranteed. But emotional power is not built on guarantees. It is built on stability in the middle of uncertainty. And when you master detachment, you are no longer easily shaken by what happens outside. You become anchored in what happens within. And that is where silent power truly begins.